So good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? Well, good. I hope that you're having a good day so far at the summit. It's been quite busy. Thank you for attending this panel. So we've got 4 people joining us today from AWS. We've got Owen, Cosgrove, Neeraj Kumar, Safrain, and Tom Maddox. So the reason why we do this panel is the second year we do it. It's because a lot of our customers are asking us about the ways, the processes we follow at Amazon, to innovate. How do we work as a company? And there's really like a special culture as well at Amazon that encourages innovation internally. So I'm going to ask a few questions to the panelists today, and I hope you'll get something out of it, and you'll learn a bit more about how we innovate at AWS. So I'm going to start with you, Owen. So first, can you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, and then I'll ask you, about the Amazon ways of innovating.
Sure. Thanks, Sonia. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. We are a small but well-formed group, I would say. My name's Owen Cosgrove. I lead the enterprise account management team for AWS in the UK. So these are teams of people who work with our existing customers to make sure they get the best use out of the platform and also promote the platform to potential new customers.
Thank you. So we talk about builders, and what do we mean by builders at AWS, and what impact does that have on the people we hire?
Yeah. So probably the best way to think about that is if I just frame how we think about builders in terms of the philosophy that we have at Amazon, which is a simple one, but it's been there since Jeff Bezos started the company, and it's based really around 3 simple concepts or thoughts. So the first one is that we are customer obsessed. Amazon is a maniacally customer obsessed organization. And you'll see that played out in AWS in lots of different ways. So for example, the roadmap, our product roadmap, is generated by feedback from our customers. We have thousands of customer-facing people all over the world, folks like us, and an important part of our job is to take feedback from our customers and feed it into the product teams. So we are traveling in a direction that our customers want. So that's the first key idea. Second key idea is that we're long-term oriented. So with AWS and with Amazon, we hope to build businesses and build concepts that will outlast all of us. And in AWS, we hope the relationships that we form with our customers will be successful business relationships that last long beyond any one of our tenures within the organization. And the third part of that, to Sonia's question, is around builders. So the third part is we think about invention, and we hire people who like to build and people who like to invent. And what do we mean by that? Well, we hire people who have a natural curiosity, people who, when they look at the status quo, don't necessarily just accept that status quo. And they're curious about thinking about different ways to solve for problems and how to look around corners to delight customers. And when you put those 3 things together, that's the philosophy that we have in Amazon, and it's detailed even further in the leadership principles that we have. What we offer in return for people who follow that philosophy and are drawn towards Amazon is an environment that produces or offers to people a huge amount of autonomy and of independence. I've been hiring people and building teams at AWS for almost 5 years now, and the most common piece of feedback I get from people who join when they join is that although they were drawn by the leadership principles, one of the things that excites them most is the level of independence and ownership and autonomy that they have to actually execute their role within AWS and within Amazon. And then what naturally happens, I guess, because of the people that we hire, is they tend to get involved in things that are outside the daily remit of their role. So of course we all have day jobs that orient us towards certain tasks for our customers, but we also have an opportunity to go and get involved in lots of other projects or initiatives that are happening AWS-wide or even company-wide. And that gives us an opportunity to work with different people who are in different teams who we may not work with on a normal day-to-day basis, which of course is a great way for us as humans to learn. And then we hope as people build their career in AWS and Amazon, we have over 500,000 employees now today spread over countless countries in almost every continent. So the opportunity to learn and to develop is practically limitless, and that's how we think about builders and how they can succeed at Amazon.
That's fantastic, and I mean, I've been working with you for a few years now, And I know that this applies to all the departments at Amazon. So you're looking after sales, so looking after customers, managing their account.
Yeah.
And that also applies to the people that you're recruiting. There's no set structure on how they have to manage those customers. There's always space for innovation.
Absolutely, and I think when we think about innovation, we think about building, we often think about, particularly in a technology company like Amazon, we think about software teams, and it's easy to think about how software organizations are manufacturing software that create oftentimes customer-facing or consumer-facing products or platforms that add value to customers, and that's an easy way to think about innovation and building. But it also applies to field teams, so if you think about the enterprise account management or sales teams that we have within AWS, AWS is a very complex platform. It has a very broad variety of services and a depth of features within those services. Enterprises may or may not have a history of building or buying or outsourcing, whatever it is, but ultimately they want to get the services within the AWS platform to use for their customers. And that space between the complexity of the AWS platform and a successful solution for our enterprise customers, that's the space where we apply the field resources that we have within the enterprise team. And we do lots of innovation there. So I'll give you one example. So one of the concepts that we have at Amazon is called a two-pizza team, which you may have heard of. But simply what it means is we tend to organize teams in very small, discrete units that can be fed by no more than 2 pizzas, American-sized pizzas, I hasten to add. So typically these teams may be 6 to 12 people, right? Maybe 8 or 9 people. And the idea behind those teams is they are fully responsible for a problem that is small enough that can be solved in that team, but they're responsible for the whole problem from soup to nuts. So it creates a lot of autonomy, it creates a lot of responsibility, and it inspires people to innovate. So we took that concept, and when we looked at what our customers were asking for in the enterprise space, of course, organizations are very keen to innovate and to build, and it's no longer acceptable or possible for organizations of any size to not innovate. It's quickly becoming table stakes at how you compete in today's market. And what we noticed with the feedback we got from our customers for some time now is that the technical debt that they've built up, particularly if they've been going for a decade or two, is really holding them back, and it's diverting too much of their attention and their resources and stopping them from moving at pace in the direction they need to do, which is to innovate. So they've been asking us for some time now, how can you help us resolve for that technical debt? So we wrote a paper, we built a team, and we now have a small 2-pizza team with very specific, very deep specialist expertise aimed at solving for that challenge customers are asking us to solve for around reducing technical debt. And that concept went from an idea written down in a narrative to launched within 6 months, and today that team is staffed and is busy hiring and scaling and already offering or providing value to our customers around that problem set.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Owen. So we've got 2 solutions architects here. We've got Niraj and Shafrin. I've got two questions for you. So Niraj, what is the main thing you think helped you become a great builder at AWS?
Sure. So, hi everyone. So I think there are a few things I can think from a personal experience, and the first thing that really jumps out at me is the freedom that builders need. Freedom to think and freedom to build and do things that you really feel passionate about. I think that's one of the distinct things I've experienced since I've been with the AWS for the last 2.5 years. And the second thing is you're encouraged to think in that manner as well. That's kind of ingrained in the DNA of the organization. And as you come up with these ideas, you're encouraged to see these ideas through, and there's a whole support network behind you. From fellow solution architects to colleagues working in technical account manager, professional services. There's a whole raft of team behind you trying to support you and get these ideas to the next level. So that's one second point. And the third point is, which I think that Owen briefly mentioned, is this whole working backwards culture. That's really good because the whole process, I'm sure we'll later on delve a little bit more into that process, but this really helps you identify and sift through good ideas from the ones which may take a bit longer. So it really helps you kind of crystallize your thinking around, you know, where should you double down and put your energies behind. So I think these are some very distinct things I personally observed and experienced here.
You.
Absolutely.
Thank you. What about you, Shafreen?
So hey guys. I think Owen mentioned two pizza teams, and one of the things that I would mention that it may be limiting in scope when you talk about these teams, but it doesn't limit you. It gives you the freedom when you come to technology choices or even your roadmap, say, for example. One such example, as in that Niraj was just talking about, where you don't really have you know, you have a job profile, but you don't necessarily have to make sure that you're just aligned with that alone. You do get to work with a lot of teams. We constantly work with cross teams. I'll give you an example. I worked last year a lot with our startup teams, and they're really fast moving. They're cutting edge technologies that you use. And what I learned from that was to build up upon those technologies, learning to actually learn those technologies and actually use them as foundations. So that was really good.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got Tom as well in the panel today. So Tom is a manager. He's actually Shafreen's manager, so for the solution architecture team. And Tom, you've been here for a while as well, and we talked a lot about, you know, at Amazon, you've got your job description, you've got your role, but there's so much more you have to be involved in if you want to learn. And you led, I think now for the past 2 or 3 years, an internal project that really encouraged people to innovate. Can you tell us more about the London Calling?
Yeah, sure. So London Calling is an event that we host internally in Amazon. And it really started off as a way for us to drag people away from the day-to-day and give them the opportunity to immerse themselves and invest into what it is to have an idea in Amazon and how to get attention on that. So the event is a 2-day event where we take a large group of people and give them some training on what working backwards actually means in Amazon. So if you've not heard of the working backwards process, it's been mentioned a couple of times, but it's short for working backwards from the customer. And you can look at this online and find some talks on it, but basically we start with how would we announce this project or this idea, and what value would it bring to the audience and the customers. And by starting with that, we're making sure we're keeping ourselves true to adding value to our customers and our groups. And so because that's quite a specific process, and it's a muscle that needs practicing and developing to really produce high quality working backwards projects, we deliver a training and a workshop on that, and then we have kind of a Dragon's Den style 24 hours of building pitches and ideas and getting some ideas down on paper, and forming teams as well. So these teams are taken from all different roles in Amazon, technical, non-technical, doesn't matter. We're all builders, right? And these people will work together, take advantage of each other's perspectives, get an idea down on paper and see what it's like to pitch that and have it critiqued and reviewed. It sounds scary. It's actually just the most fun that you can have. Right?
Yeah, and I think if I can add that, the beauty of that event is that everyone within the business is actually involved, from marketing, HR, all the departments. So that brings the diversity that we need to have all the benefits of various background and experience with customers. So there's no gap in what we deliver to our customers at the end. It's not like just a one way of thinking. It's basically bringing all that wealth of experience together, and you learn a lot. So Niraj, my next question is, it's for you. What is the one thing you think you really learned, since you joined? Because, we all think AWS and Amazon is a completely different company. This is not our first job. So what do you think you learned since you joined?
Sure. Yeah, I think thinking about one is going to be a hard one. But yeah, I'll still share my own personal experience and my journey of 2.5 years here, which feels much longer, by the way, in Amazon years.
Yeah.
I think we learn on an everyday basis. Every day there's something new, and I'm sure you being customers know the pace of change and how many new technical service releases we come up with, and the blog posts and so on and so forth. So there's always something new you're learning, at the job from customers, understanding their businesses. But if I have to pick one thing, I would say public speaking is something I had never done before at AWS. I may be embarrassing myself here, but that's the truth. It always daunted me. I was always afraid of doing that. But this is what changes. When you join a company which is actually built on that whole mindset of entrepreneurial mindset, and encourages you to take calculated risks, and makes you actually, that it doesn't feel like you're stepping off your comfort zone, but you are. So that's one thing that's been really remarkable for me personally. I started 2 years ago. I've done quite a few of these public speaking events like summits, reInvent, webinars, so on and so forth. So that's clearly is one thing, one fear which I overcame after joining AWS.
I heard so many times since I've been here 5 years, and I heard so many times people mentioning how after a few, maybe from 2 years, you learn so much. You feel like you're doing your Amazon MBA. And the great thing is you learn so much, you're exposed to so many things, and you give back to the customers. And that's the great thing about it. Shafreen, what is your experience?
I think I'd echo the public speaking point. I have never, up until last year, I think was the first time when I went live public speaking sessions, and I've always been on the other side where you guys are at the moment. So it is quite daunting. These lights in your face is all about, oh my God, this is too nervous and too scary. But I think it does when you, and we were talking about this, Sonia and I just outside, and she mentioned that, when you think about customers and you think about, it's not about yourself, you're thinking about what you're giving back to customers and how they can learn and benefit from this. So I think that one has been a good one. And so far, since I started, I've worked with various customers. We have millions of active customers, and our team actually works with a lot of different verticals. So it could be fintech, it could be, we support startups, it could be media and advertising. So each of those come with different use cases. They come with their own challenges. They come with, some of them are business disruptors. And actually learning from that and focusing on those customers, you automatically get to see a whole variance of use cases, and no two customers are the same, regardless of the vertical.
Well, thank you. So I think we talked about it before, and there's this perception as well, and from your responses all so far, it really sounds that not only you've got your job to do, but you are all involved in extracurricular projects, and that's really core to to our culture. So there is this perception of Amazonian being really busy, working a lot. So Tom, you're a manager. You've been here a while, and you run a project like the London Calling. How do you make sure you stay on top of everything?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get asked in interviews a lot, what's the best thing about working at AWS, and also what's the toughest thing? And I give the same answer to both of the questions, because easily the best thing is just how many different projects there are, and everything is pretty much the coolest project that I could have wanted to get involved in at any given time. So it is really easy to get involved in lots of things, but I'd say that one of the toughest things is knowing when to say yes and when something aligns with your interest. But then also how to guard your time and set borders around yourself. So like typically as a manager, part of my role in that is to help new builders in Amazon to spend maybe the first 6 months understanding the day-to-day, the expectations, and mastering that to the point where they can deliver on the expectations and exceed expectations there, and then they find that they start to have a little bit of free time to invest in those passions, those interests. And we have various policies and mechanisms that mean that people can actually reserve that time in their calendar and dedicate that time to the projects they're passionate about, which is just so important. Right?
And not just because he's here, but I genuinely, I'm going to say this now, because he's constantly encouraging us to block time out, and because learning is part of our role, so that we can help our customers better. We hit the highest standards for them. So yeah.
Validating. Good. Okay. So Owen, I'm just going back to you. So you've been here for over 7 years. Am I correct? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, almost 8. Scary.
And you moved roles 4 times in your career, and so your responsibilities have increased over the years, obviously. I mean, I've known you for 5 years, so I know that your responsibilities have increased at home as well. How do you think that the Amazon culture helped you, perform and still stay on top of everything, despite, the changes?
Yeah, I've been on my career arc since I've been here almost 8 years. Has been beyond what I could have imagined. When I started here, back in 2010, I joined as an individual contributor. So just having sole responsibility for an account set, if you like. I then got tapped on the shoulder after a couple of years, saying, "Hey, we need a few managers. Do you want to be a manager?" And I said, "Oh, okay." And then. So then I went into that. Then I built the first one of the first customer segments that we had, the mid-market segment, or small and medium-sized business. Then we had a gap for almost a year where there was no country lead in place. So I got to do that on an interim basis, which, while being terribly daunting, was also a great experience.
That was a great role.
And yeah, we didn't sync while on my watch, which I was relieved with. And then I focused on the enterprise business now for about the last two and a half years. So when I look at the career arc and the opportunities I had, I'm just internally grateful, and I don't take it for granted. And I pinch myself that I've had the opportunity to develop the way I have, and also that I continue to see that opportunity and more as we go into the future. Of course, my private life took a parallel track as well. I was largely, responsibilityless and free. Back in 2010, and now I've got responsibilities and young family and all the rest of it, and no freedom. So, which with natural course of events. But I found Amazon to be a very supportive, and sympathetic employer of working parents. I've had periods of time where we've got a couple of kids at home, one newborn. So it suited me and my wife if I could do, pick up and drop off in the nursery, which means I could spend a lot less time in the office. But, I'm master of my own destiny to a certain degree. Yeah. So I was able to work out flexible arrangements where I was able to leave the office early and go collect my child and have some family time. And then I could open my laptop later on and finish off what I needed to do. But that suited me for that period of time. So I was grateful to have those flexible arrangements. And I've taken a leaf out of your book, Sonia, as well. I know you took some extended leave last summer. And I was looking at you having 5 or 6 weeks off, wherever you were, somewhere nice and sunny, and I said, I want a piece of that. So I'm this in a few weeks' time, this summer, I'm taking 5 weeks off as sabbatical type thing, and I'm using some of the very generous paternity leave Amazon offers. I'm just going to disappear and go somewhere nice and sunny with the family to unwind for a little bit of time. So a couple of examples there of certainly my experience has been Amazon, an incredibly supportive employer for working parents.
And I think it all goes back to so we are guided by our leadership principles. So Amazon has 14 leadership principles, and one that really stands out is basically ownership. So you are the entrepreneur and the owner of your business.
Right.
So that means you can do what you want as long as you deliver. You can take 6 weeks off. Well, you can't always, but
You do have to ask. I'm not just disappearing. I did ask.
But we've got a leadership principle that is called earn trust. I think you earn the trust, and you show that you had full ownership of your business, and that's how things are happening. So you are allowed then to do all those things, obviously.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Tom, I've got a question for you, because now we're going to talk about how you create new roles at Amazon. So we find gap at Amazon and at AWS, and I've witnessed that over the 5 years I've been here, when new roles, new job titles come up, because we speak to you, we speak to all our customers, and we realize that something is missing. So we either do that, or we also build a role, like something, we grow it ourselves. We've got this, it's about ownership. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I would just add to the ownership point as well. So one of our leadership principles, which is part of our DNA in Amazon, how we make decisions, is ownership, as Sonia was saying. And that doesn't mean you have to own every problem you find. That just means you need to find an owner or progress it to the point where it will progress, right? But specifically for developing your own role, I've seen loads of examples of this, and I've done a bit of this myself, where you find a problem and you decide, actually, I don't want to just help this move forward. Actually, I want this problem to be what I do a lot. And so people have that freedom, that flexibility to do that. And often people will define a new role within Amazon just because they're working so much on one problem. it just makes sense for that to become, a permanent position for that person. That's not quite the point I'm at with one project that I'm working on, but I've built a graduate program. And so a large part of my role now is supporting early careers and new Amazonians in that way, just because it's something I'm passionate about and it's something that I wanted to have an impact on. And I think that's a good example, hopefully, of me perhaps not taking a permanent 100% dedication to something, but it's a pretty significant part of my role now, and it's something I really love and I'm passionate about.
Right, thank you. So just going back to you, Neeraj, we're talking always about all the different projects that we're involved in. And so I want you to give us some examples of the project that you've been involved in outside of your current role. And I don't know if you've noticed, but so Neeraj is actually working for marketing. His picture is on the DLR platform. He was part of our campaign, and
it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, he's a superstar. The marketing team that I'm heading, we only use our staff in the UK for all the pictures, everything that we're doing. So it's real people speaking to you guys that are part of those campaigns. So that's one project you've been involved in.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Sure. So just to give a bit of a feel for what essays do actually, and just to build on earlier point Shafreen brought up. So whilst our day job is really around customers, making sure customers are well architected and they're getting the best value from AWS. In addition to that, we do get involved in what you were referring to, extracurricular activities, which includes things like writing content, bringing thought leadership in terms of the blogs and the white papers. As well as some of the marketing activities, like last year, if I have to give one precise example where those pictures come from. Last year, we were looking at, this is how we'd like to scale out the knowledge for our customers. So there was this project I was working on of connected drones. This is not something I thought of. It was from a real customer problem. They wanted to build drones. So just for the context, I work in the energy and utility sector, which is where we see a lot of IoT and machine learning kind of projects and use cases. So this was one of such discussions we were having, that we want drones to be able to for the purpose of surveillance and places where it's hard to send human, and that kind of clicked in my head and thought, yeah, why don't I actually build a prototype around that rather than just draw on the whiteboard? Why don't I build something tangible? So that's what I did for that project, which went through the campaign, and it's again a good example. There were other really good projects as well in that campaign, and this is a good example of how we as an SAs get involved in spreading that knowledge and scale that knowledge out to at a wider scale.
Yeah, thank you. So we talked a little bit about the leadership principles, and I said, there's 14 of them. So, Shafreen, tell us about the leadership principles, and tell us, how they impact our daily life at Amazon.
Well, leadership principles, they are a company's DNA, really. They are a decision framework. They actually do help us make the right choices and decisions when it comes to it. And if you read them carefully, you'll notice that they actually have conflicts between them.
Can you give us some examples of leadership principles?
Yeah, sure. So conflicts, and these are intentional conflicts, right? Yeah. So if you think about bias for action versus insisting on higher standards, those actually, you'd reason before you actually go ahead and make a decision based on a particular scenario that you'd have. Customer obsession, I think that is my favorite one. I'm sure it is. Everyone else is here as well. But when it comes to helping out with other teams, like I mentioned, whether it's marketing team doing large-scale events such as the summit here, the reInvent. We do Awesome Day Online, where we do recordings and webinars for those. And all of these have direct impact on our customers. So in some way or the other, we are trying to work together to make sure that we're reaching out to our customers and helping them evolve.
Thank you. So, Tom, so we talked about the leadership principles. Now we're going to talk about some of the processes that we follow internally. We talked about the two-pizza team concept. the working backward concept as well. So tell me more about what we follow internally and describe the most popular ones.
Okay. So I'm going to be perhaps a little bit more specific with some of the examples that we've given. So we spoke about 2 pizza teams already, and that's actually one of my favorite things about Amazon overall, because it applies ubiquitously across the entire company. And there's just this expectation when you start working with a different team in Amazon, it'll be a group of real people with just typical problems because they're of a certain size, right? So if the name comes from each team in Amazon should be able to be fed with 2 American pizzas. The American part is quite important there because those frozen pizzas you get in supermarkets probably wouldn't cut it. But yeah, the idea is that the teams are small enough to be able to work quickly, make decisions around the technology, which customer priorities they want to include into their roadmap. But yet the impact that they have is never going to cripple the business if they make a mistake, right? And so I think that's really inherent in, it's really important in how quickly we can innovate and build. I think another important thing there is the people that we're putting into those teams. So we talk about hiring and developing the best. That's another one of our leadership principles, and it's just such an important part of our role. Yes. Owen will just sort of nod his head, I'm sure, because like the amount of time we spend on recruitment and finding people that like to build and like to own projects. But once you join Amazon, you see that a lot. And you see people that just can't wait to grab projects and build them. So I think finding people that have that drive and also the skills to do that is important. We have processes like the working backwards from the customer process that I just mentioned. So if you're not sure where to start on projects, these are great places to get things down on paper and to build a squad or a team that will collaborate with you on that.
And for the working backward, if I may interrupt, there's also the notion of writing a narrative, which is new to anyone joining Amazon. It's basically, there's no PowerPoint presentation at Amazon. When you present something, you write a dissertation, and it's a pain. It's a real pain at first. And then you understand why you have to write a narrative, because you go so deep into your reasoning and the detail that you have to demonstrate why you have a case for the customer, really helps you come with actually a better plan.
I think someone famously asked Jeff Bezos in an all hands, is it difficult? Do we need to do the working backwards process? And Jeff says, yes, it is difficult, but we think it saves a lot more time in the long run because we build the things that matter most, we invest in the things that matter most, which is a really important perspective, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I missing anything, Sonia? What else?
There's a failing fast.
Failing fast.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a phrase that goes around for sure. Bias
for action and ownership and making sure that when you have an idea, if you have to fail, if there's a risk, just do it fast and try again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, this is one of the more empowering culture elements at Amazon. There's very much a blameless culture. If something goes wrong, it's because the systems and the tooling made the situation where that could go wrong. And so I think failing fast is this concept where things can fail and we'll learn from it and we'll prevent those things from failing again. But also the barriers to entry for building proof of concepts, for getting an idea down on paper and building a team around it, there's barely any barriers to entry. So why wouldn't we make as much progress as we can with an idea? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's not the end of the world. At least we know that now, and we've gone through the exercise and we understand that.
Thank you. So Owen, I'm just coming back to you now. I really like the fact that there's not many people that have been here for so long at AWS, and we were growing very fast as an organization overall, but also in the UK. And for companies like Amazon, where the culture is key, for our customers, is key for us in general, how we operate internally. How can we protect that culture?
Yeah, it's I think there's 2 parts to that. For sure, as we grow, when I joined Amazon in 2010, there was 50,000 employees. I think today Amazon has north of 550,000 employees, if I get my numbers correct. So that's 500,000 people hired in 8 years, which is mind-boggling when you think about it. So of course it's important that we're mindful about the culture and that we have to protect it. But you could answer that a different way as well. The culture is what helps us move at that pace and innovate so fast and grow at the speed we have. So we've heard variously today around the culture that we have within AWS. We've heard about the organizational structure, things like 2 pizza teams, and they've heard about some of the mechanisms like the working backwards process or narratives. But those 3 things together is the sauce, if you like, or the formula through which and how which Amazon innovates. And that harnesses the creativity of the people we hire and applies it in an environment where we can move really, really quickly. So they feed each other, I think, because of the way we're organized in the unique culture that Amazon has. We're able to maintain that because we're putting people into an environment where the culture is reinforced on a regular basis. And the ground zero for that, as Tom mentioned, is the leadership principles. And I've worked in other large American organizations where they have their version of leadership principles, tenets, or whatever they call them, and you see them once a year on a board in some room where you do your annual performance review, and that's it. It couldn't be more different at AWS. The leadership principles, they're part of our daily vernacular. We hire against them. Everybody, at the rate we're hiring, everybody does at least a couple of interviews a week. So that gives you a good insight into the leadership principles because we do competency-based interviewing against the leadership principles. So you're examining other people against the leadership principles. So it builds a real deep understanding of the leadership principles. So it's just ingrained in the DNA of the organization, the way we behave.
On the leadership principles as well.
Exactly, exactly. Career progression is based on, in a large part, your performance or around demonstrating each of those leadership principles. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, thank you. So finally, I mean, things are happening very fast at AWS. We work at a very, very fast pace, and it's the era of digital transformation. So just a question for you, Shafrin, before we wrap up. Is there anything that still surprises you at AWS?
Yeah, every day is day one, literally.
Every day is day one,
yes. Okay. You just get, I'll give you actually, if you haven't seen it already, there's the Innovation Hub, which has got the Builders Day content as well. That we, as solutions architects internally, in fact, Neeraj and I were on rival teams where we built stuff together, and you can see the exhibits there. So there were use cases. We did follow the entire, working backwards. We wrote narratives for it as well. We wrote PR FAQs as well, and it's all about going above and beyond your normal day-to-day. And yeah, learning from it. I think I've learned more than I would have ever done in any other organization. I come from a DevOps infrastructure and operations background, and there are a certain set of technologies that you would actually use in your day-to-day. But I think I was always keen about learning about AI and ML, say for example, or big data services, which I didn't really get the opportunity to do. But because of the nature of my work today, I do dive deep into and get to actually work on these, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I guess you are exposed to so many things now.
Absolutely.
From a technology perspective, that there's no more surprises. Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned it's always day one. It's still day one.
It is still day one.
So Tom, what do we mean by that? This is really something that Jeff Bezos is always reminding all our customers about.
Yeah, it's actually a bit of a running joke in Amazon. So we have our statement, it's always day one. And so, which day of the summit is this, Sonia?
It's day one.
It's day two. We had a pre-day yesterday, but it's still day one, right?
It's still day one. It's still day one.
So we try and catch each other out with this internally, just as a joke. But what it really means to us, Jeff Bezos wrote about this in his shareholders letter in 1997. And he reposts the letter every year because it's just so important for us to review and check. Are we thinking and are we behaving like a day one company that's got the world at its feet and it's doing everything it can to seize that opportunity? Or are we reacting, are we a day two company looking back at what we've done and the mistakes we've made and getting hung up on that and getting hung up on our competition and so on?
Yeah.
And so that day one mentality is really, some things might not be there, some things might not be built yet. That's cool. Let's get stuck in and let's do it.
Yeah.
Which is
it's
awesome.
basically never resting. It's only day one. You know, it's only the beginning, and we're continuing building and innovating, you know, for our customers and for Amazon and for Amazon Web Services. So that's great. Well, I don't have any more questions. I hope that was quite insightful for you. If you want to learn more, there's another similar session at the Innovation Hub this afternoon at 3 o'clock. If you have any questions, you know, come and meet us, you know, at the end of the session. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, everyone.